In the gilded heart of Manhattan's most exclusive modern French steakhouse, Argento, where crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light and forks danced in symphonic elegance, a single sentence shattered the hum of wealth like a stone through stained glass. I don't take orders from people who don't know what they're really hungry for. The words spoken by Miles Carter weren't loud or jagged, but they cut with the precision of a blade forged in years of swallowed silence. A hush descended, silencing the clink of glasses and the murmur of privilege, leaving only the weight of his words hanging in the air like a gauntlet thrown at the feet of power. Miles stood tall, his black apron pressed to perfection, his white shirt a canvas of quiet defiance. In one hand, he cradled a bottle of Bordeaux destined for table 8. In the other, the fractured remnants of someone else's patience. Across from him sat Ava Lancaster, queen of real estate tech, her face an ice sculpture teetering on the edge of a crack. Moments earlier, her voice had lashed out, venomous and sharp, slicing into a young server, Ben, barely 20, who'd stumbled over the name of a French dish. "Excuse me," she'd snapped, loud enough for nearby tables to flinch. "If you can't speak with precision, why are you speaking at all?" The boy's face drained to a ghostly pallor, his stammer a futile shield before he fled, eyes glistening with shame. Miles had witnessed this scene too many times, power wielded like a fist, crushing those who served it. But tonight, something in him broke free, a spark igniting a fire he hadn't known he carried. He stepped forward, not with anger, but with a resolve as steady as a heartbeat. Ava's gaze met his, eyes like molten steel that could freeze lava. "I didn't ask for your opinion," she said, her voice brittle as glass, each syllable a warning. Miles didn't waver. "No," he replied, calm as a still lake. "You asked for respect without offering any in return." The restaurant fell under a spell, the kind only raw tension can weave. A man at the next table froze, napkin half raised. A woman by the window set her wineglass down, its ruby liquid trembling. Even the pianist in the corner faltered, his fingers slipping from the keys, as if the room itself held its breath, caught in the gravity of a moment that refused to bend. Ava leaned back, her posture a study in control, assessing Miles like a lion sizing up a rival who dared to step into her den. "You must think this is brave," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "Making a scene for your 15 seconds of fame?" Miles' eyes held hers, unflinching, his voice steady as stone. "Real bravery isn't measured by volume. It's measured by silence. How long someone like that kid can endure before someone else says, 'Enough.'" Her jaw tightened, a flicker of something, anger, recognition, crossing her face. The room watched, wide-eyed, as the air crackled with the weight of their standoff. With the slow grace of a courtroom titan, though this stage was lit by candlelight, Ava waved a dismissive hand. "Bring me the Wagyu filet, medium rare, and a new server." Miles didn't move. "No." The word landed like a pebble in a pond, rippling outward. Ava's voice rose, not loud but electric, charged with disbelief. "Is this how Argento trains its staff now? To pick and choose their guests?" Miles' response was a quiet thunder. "I'm not refusing to serve you. I'm refusing to serve your anger." Somewhere in the shadows, a phone buzzed. A lens glinted. Unseen by Ava, a video was born, capturing the moment that would soon set the internet ablaze. She stared at him, her voice cold as frost. "What's your name, Miles? I'll make sure you're not here tomorrow." He nodded, not with fear or bravado, but with the peace of a man who'd already fought his war. "You do what you need to. I already did." With that, he turned, walking back to the kitchen, servers parting like waves before a ship cutting through a storm. His heart pounded, not from fear but from release, as if he'd finally spoken a truth rehearsed in the quiet corners of his soul. In the kitchen, Marcy, the owner and general manager, stood waiting, arms crossed, her jaw set in the fierce way of a mother ready to defend or discipline. "What happened?" Her tone wasn't a question, it was a lit fuse. Miles handed off the wine bottle, his voice steady. "She humiliated Ben. Publicly. I couldn't let it slide." Marcy exhaled sharply through her nose, her eyes flashing with a mix of dread and recognition. That's Ava Lancaster, Miles. Do you know how many zeros she's worth? How many investors dine here with her? How many influencers follow her dog on Instagram? Miles leaned against the prep counter, grounding himself in its cold steel. I know I didn't sign up to be her punching bag. She'll make calls to the owner, to Yelp, to God if she thinks it'll help. Marcy's gaze softened, but her voice held firm. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying you picked a fight with a woman who doesn't lose. Miles met her eyes, his voice low but resolute. I'm raising a daughter, Marcy. I don't want Ella growing up thinking money gives you the right to crush people. That stopped Marcy, if only for a heartbeat. The manager in her braced for fallout. The former waitress, who'd once scrubbed plates in a greasy diner, nodded, remembering the sting of power's casual cruelty. I'll talk to her, she said, her voice softening. But Miles, be ready for the consequences. Hours later, the world began to hum. The video tagged the confrontation spread like wildfire across TikTok, Reddit, and Instagram, its title blazing, Waiter Tells Off Billionaire CEO in Manhattan Steakhouse. Clipped, edited, and hashtagged, it painted Miles as both hero and heretic. He didn't take her order, he took a stand. Some called him a champion of the underdog. Others branded him unprofessional, a reckless fool. Miles didn't see it. He was too busy washing Ella's dishes, helping her glue glitter to a solar system diorama, and tucking her into bed as she babbled about a class hamster named Buttons. Only after her tiny hand curled into his shirt, her breathing soft with sleep, did he check his phone. A flood of texts, missed calls, and emails from strangers, reporters, old college friends, lit up the screen. And one message from an unknown number glowed with menace. You think you're noble? You're not. Enjoy the attention while it lasts. Miles stared at it, the words a cold blade against his resolve. Then he locked his phone, set it face down, and whispered into the dark. I didn't want attention. I just wanted her to see herself. Somewhere across the city in a penthouse where Manhattan's skyline glittered like a crown, Ava Lancaster sat alone, rewatching the video. Her own voice, sharp, cruel, echoed back. But it was Miles's words that lingered, cutting deeper than she'd expected. For the first time, she saw not just the CEO, but the woman beneath, and something inside her began to crack. Not with shame, but with the faint, unfamiliar ache of truth. The internet churned, a digital coliseum where corporate apologists clashed with battle-scarred hospitality veterans, their words a storm of hashtags and hot takes. A chew he didn't take her order trended across platforms, spawning trap remixes and a fledgling merch line. But Miles Carter was worlds away from the fray. In the quiet of his Queens apartment, he scrubbed sauce from Ella's dinner plates, helped her glue a wobbly Jupiter onto her solar system diorama, and listened as she chattered about Buttons, the class hamster with a penchant for escape. Only when her tiny hand curled into his shirt, her breath soft with sleep, did he dare glance at his phone. It glowed with chaos. Dozens of texts, missed calls, emails from reporters he'd never met, and college friends he hadn't spoken to in years. One message from an unknown number cut deeper than the rest. You think you're noble? You're not. Enjoy the attention while it lasts. Miles stared at the words, their venom a cold weight in his chest. He locked the phone, set it face down on the nightstand, and whispered into the shadowed room. I didn't want attention. I just wanted her to see herself. His voice was barely a breath, but it carried the weight of a man who'd spent years carrying grief and love in equal measure. A father teaching his daughter that dignity wasn't for sale. Across the concrete labyrinth of Manhattan, in a penthouse where the city's skyline glittered like a taunting crown, Ava Lancaster stood at her window, the city's pulse mocking her own. She rewatched the video, 72 seconds of a waiter, calm as a summer rain, refusing to bow to her storm. Her own voice, sharp and cruel, echoed back, a mirror she couldn't shatter. In a glass-walled conference room, her questions sliced through the silence like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Is he fired yet? Her legal counsel, publicist, and VP of Operations Nick Haynes exchanged wary glances, each silently praying another would speak first. No one did. Ava's exhaustion wasn't just jet lag from a red-eye to San Francisco, where she'd faced restless investors. It was bone deep, the kind that came from battling on too many fronts for too many years. Her armor forged from ambition, now heavy with cracks. The video had reached her before her plane touched down, sent by an assistant with a subject line that screamed urgency. She'd watched it once, then again, and again, each replay peeling back another layer of her carefully curated self. This wasn't a failed product launch or a corporate leak she could spin. This was her, raw, exposed, her anger laid bare for the world to judge. Her publicist finally broke the silence, voice trembling with caution. Ava, it's bad. 2 million reposts in 24 hours. The hashtag's trending on 4 platforms, and there's a remix with trap beats and t-shirts already. Ava didn't flinch, her eyes fixed on the skyline. And, she prompted, her tone a blade wrapped in silk. We suggest a statement, the publicist ventured. Apologize, frame it as stress. Humanize it, maybe mention your parents or charity work. Ava's lips twitched. I don't have a nonprofit. Her assistant, too eager, piped up. We could start one. Ava turned to Nick, her VP, his polished calm as infuriating as ever. He leaned back, fingers threaded, the kind of man who'd charm a funeral and leave with the estate. It's a blip, he said smoothly, but the timing's brutal. The IPO's close, and the board's jittery. Investors are spooked. If this lingers, they'll want a leadership statement, or a change. Ava's eyes narrowed, her voice low and lethal. You mean my leadership? Nick's shrug was diplomatic, but his words cut. It's optics, Ava. You built this empire from nothing, but perception drives valuation. Right now, you're the villain who made a waiter a hero. She hated his ease, hated his truth. But most of all, she hated how Miles's words haunted her. I'm refusing to serve your anger. He'd named the storm inside her, laid it bare before the world, and she'd had no reply. In that moment, she wasn't the untouchable CEO. She was a woman caught in her own reflection, and it burned. Back in Queens, Miles sat at his kitchen table, the silence a rare gift in a single parent's world. Dishes were done, Ella's lunch packed, her homework tucked away. He scrolled past articles, memes, a clip of himself with Spanish subtitles. But he felt no triumph. He felt raw, exposed, like a nerve laid bare. He hadn't meant to go viral, hadn't meant to challenge a titan. He'd only wanted to shield a kid from a woman whose own storm had spilled over, tearing at anyone in its path. Sipping lukewarm coffee, he muttered, one sentence. That's all it took to burn it all down. A message pinged, not from a stranger, but from Marcy. Come in an hour early tomorrow. We need to talk. Bring your apron just in case. Just in case, he echoed aloud, the words a coded warning that his fate hung in the balance. The next morning, Miles walked into Argento, head high but stomach knotted, the weight of the unknown pressing against his ribs. Marcy met him in the back office, closing the door with a soft click that felt like a gavel's fall. Her eyes were heavy, more tired than usual, carrying the strain of a woman balancing loyalty and survival. You're still here, she said, her voice a mix of relief and warning. That's something. Miles managed a weary smile. Not exactly a gold star, but I'll take it. She didn't return the smile, her arms crossed like a shield. I got a call from Ava Lancaster's people. His spine stiffened, bracing for the blow. She didn't demand your job or threaten a lawsuit, Marcy continued. Just said she'd be watching how we handle reputational risk, which in rich persons speak means she's not done with you. Miles exhaled, his voice steady but low. So you're firing me? Marcy shook her head. No, I watched that video too. You didn't yell, didn't shame her. You held a line most of us forgot existed. A pause, then her voice softened, like a mother speaking to a son who'd fought a battle she understood too well. She was cruel, but you didn't strike back. You held up a mirror. Miles looked away, the weight of her words too heavy to hold. It didn't feel noble. Marcy's lips curved faintly. It rarely does, but it was, and the world felt it. Miles nodded, his jaw tight, the weight of Marcy's words settling like dust after a storm. So what now? He asked, voice low, carrying the quiet resolve of a man who'd already faced loss and won back his daughter's trust. Marcy leaned forward, elbows braced on the desk, her eyes sharp but softened by a flicker of admiration. You keep doing your job, Miles, but brace yourself. This story's far from over. She'll come back. Women like Ava Lancaster don't leave loose ends dangling. Miles paused, his mind drifting to Ava's icy gaze. Her armor cracked, but not shattered. She looked like someone who hasn't cried in years, he said, almost to himself. Marcy raised an eyebrow, half amused, half wary. You planning to fix her? He shook his head, slow and deliberate. I think she's already cracked. That night, in her penthouse perched above Manhattan's glittering skyline, Ava stood alone, the city's lights cold and indifferent. She ignored the flurry of interview requests, discarded PR drafts, let voicemails pile up like unopened wounds. Instead, she played the video again. Not her sharp-tongued tirade, but him. Miles' voice calm as a still lake, his gaze steady as stone, his words refusing to bow to her anger. It wasn't what he said that haunted her. It was why it struck so deep. In a corner of her soul, long sealed from light, she knew he was right. She'd built an empire to silence pain, but it had only grown louder. The storm arrived not with thunder, but with the measured click of heels on marble. On a Tuesday evening, when Manhattan felt hushed and introspective, Ava Lancaster stepped into Argento. No entourage, no armor of influence, just a navy coat tailored to her frame, a tight ponytail, and eyes that could still cut glass. Marcy spotted her from the bar, her posture stiffening like a soldier bracing for battle. The maitre d' swallowed hard, eyes darting for Miles. Ava's voice was calm, deliberate. I'd like a table. The maitre d' hesitated. For how many? One, she replied, then added, almost as an afterthought, and if he's working, I'd like Miles to serve me. In the kitchen, Miles was plating a sea bass, his hands steady despite the weight of the past days. Marcy's head appeared in the doorway, her voice clipped. She's back, and she asked for you. He didn't flinch, just wiped his hands, straightened his apron, and asked, Table number? Ava sat alone, the menu a prop she barely glanced at, her detachment a mask for the storm within. Good evening, Miles said, his voice soft but unwavering. She lowered the menu, their eyes locking for a heartbeat. No cameras, no audience, just two souls standing in the wreckage of a moment neither had planned. Good evening, she echoed, her tone softer than before. She closed the menu with quiet finality. Steak frites, medium rare, no substitutions, and a glass of whatever red you'd recommend. I trust your judgment. Miles raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise. Do you? Her lips didn't smile, but her eyes betrayed a spark. Let's call it an experiment. He nodded and stepped away, returning to pour a deep Bordeaux, its color catching the candlelight. Ava watched the room, no longer tethered to her phone. Busy night, she remarked. Always, Miles replied. People still eat, even when the internet's burning. She sipped the wine, then spoke almost reluctantly. I didn't come to argue. I didn't think you did, he said, his voice a steady anchor. Ava set her glass down, fingers brushing the stem, her voice quieter now. You said something that night about not serving my anger. I did, he confirmed, meeting her gaze. She leaned forward, elbows on the white tablecloth, her vulnerability a rare guest. You could have humiliated me, escalated, been cruel. Why didn't you? Miles' eyes held hers unflinching. Because I've stood on both sides of that table, holding anger and taking it. Neither feels good, but only one gets to choose what comes next. The silence that followed wasn't strained. It was sacred, the kind that blooms when two people lower their shields. I wasn't always like that, Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman in that video. I built everything by being tougher than what tried to break me. Somewhere along the way, I froze over. Miles listened, his silence a gift rarer than absolution. Respect. I grew up in foster care, she continued, surprising herself with the confession. Learned early that money speaks louder than pain. So I chased one to drown the other. I thought it worked, until you didn't flinch. She looked up, searching his face. Why didn't you? He took a breath, his voice steady as dawn. Because I didn't see a monster. I saw a mirror. Sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to refuse to play along. Ava blinked, caught off guard. You always talk like that? He chuckled, soft and warm. Only on Tuesdays. The food arrived and Miles set her steak before her, noting she didn't reach for her phone to capture it. A small rebellion against her usual world. She took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. Perfect, she said, and he nodded, turning to leave. Miles, she called softly. He paused. I don't want to be that woman again, she said, her voice raw. The one who leaves ruin in her wake. He turned halfway, his words simple but piercing. Then don't. The words landed like thunder in her soul, though they were quiet as a prayer. She ate in near silence, asking only for water, her presence stripped of condescension. When she stood to leave, she paused, hand on her bag. How much is the check? On the house, Miles said without hesitation. Her brows lifted. I don't need charity. It's not charity, he replied. It's gratitude. For the quiet and for trying. She hesitated, then slid $100 bill under her wineglass. For the server who didn't flinch, she said, and the man who didn't look away. Before he could respond, she was gone, her heels fading into the night. Later, as Miles wiped down the table, Marcy appeared, arms crossed, her voice dry. Well, she didn't throw anything. Miles smirked. Is she coming back? Marcy's eyes softened. I think she already did. Across the city, Ava stood before her bathroom mirror, unfastening an earring, her reflection unfamiliar, as if she were meeting herself for the first time in years. She didn't know where she was headed, but for once, she wasn't running from herself. Change, she realized, began not with grand gestures or press releases, but with a quiet conversation, one that demanded understanding, not applause. In Central Park, on a spring afternoon, the world slowed for a moment that felt both fleeting and eternal. A small misstep on a jungle gym's final rung sent Ella tumbling, a child's stumble that could have been forgotten. But to Ava, standing on mulch and heels she had no business wearing, it was as if time paused, showing her a younger self falling, unguarded. She rushed forward, her coat flaring like a cape no superhero would claim. Careful, she called, kneeling beside the brown-haired girl, whose wide eyes held a tear hostage to pride. You okay? Ava asked, her voice soft as the spring breeze. Ella blinked, defiant. I'm fine. I'm tough. Ava smiled, her heart catching. Of course you are. But even tough kids need hugs sometimes. Ella hesitated, then flung her arms around Ava's neck, burying her face in her shoulder, a moment of trust that felt like a gift Ava hadn't earned. Miles rounded the bend, coffee in one hand, a tote of snacks in the other, freezing when he saw his daughter in Ava Lancaster's arms. Ella, he called, his voice more breath than sound. She turned, still gripping Ava's coat. Hi, Daddy, I slipped. She helped me. Miles approached, eyes scanning for scrapes before settling on Ava, wary but curious. You always hang out in playgrounds during the week? He asked, half-guarded. Ava rose, brushing mulch from her knees. Not usually. My assistant insisted on fresh air therapy. She glanced at Ella, now climbing again, fearless. She reminds me of someone. Miles followed her gaze. You? Ava shook her head, her voice soft. Someone I wanted to be. In Central Park, where spring painted the air with hope, a small stumble on a jungle gym's final rung slowed the world to a heartbeat. Ella, brown-haired and wide-eyed, caught herself on scraped palms, her knees scuffed, her lip trembling with a tear held captive by pride. Ava Lancaster, in heels ill-suited for mulch, rushed forward, her navy coat flaring like a cape no superhero would claim. To her, it wasn't just a child's fall. It was a mirror of her own unguarded youth, a chance to catch what she'd once let slip. Careful, she called, kneeling beside the girl, her voice soft as the breeze. You okay? Ella blinked, defiant. I'm fine. I'm tough. Ava's smile was a quiet bloom. Of course you are. But even tough kids need hugs sometimes. Ella hesitated, then flung her arms around Ava's neck, burying her face in her shoulder, a fleeting trust that pierced Ava's guarded heart. Miles Carter rounded the bend, coffee in one hand, a tote of snacks swinging in the other, freezing when he saw his daughter cradled in Ava Lancaster's arms. "Ella," he called, his voice a breath caught in surprise. She turned, still clutching Ava's coat. "Hi, Daddy. I slipped. She helped me." Miles approached, his eyes scanning for injuries before settling on Ava, wary yet curious. "You always hang out in playgrounds midweek?" he asked, a half-guarded edge to his tone. Ava rose, brushing mulch from her knees, her poise softened by the moment. "Not usually. My assistant prescribed fresh air therapy." She glanced at Ella, now climbing again with fearless joy. "She reminds me of someone." Miles followed her gaze. "You?" Ava shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone I wanted to be." A pause hung between them, the kind that opens doors if you dare step through. Miles gestured to a nearby bench, shaded by budding trees. "You're here. Want to sit?" They settled, watching Ella swing with the wild abandon of a child who trusted the ground to catch her. Ava's arms folded, her eyes distant. "I haven't been to a park since I was 15. Miles sipped his coffee, waiting. "Why's that?" She thought for a moment, her voice low. "Parks are where kids feel safe. I stopped feeling that way a long time ago." He stayed silent, giving her space to unravel. "I was in and out of 6 foster homes by 11, she said, the words spilling like a confession she hadn't planned. "Bounced around like a library book no one wanted. I learned fast. Be useful, be silent, be sharp." Miles nodded, his gaze steady. "And build a fortress." Ava glanced at him, startled by his insight. "You say that like you've seen one." "I built one too," he said, his voice free of pity, raw with truth. "Not as tall, maybe, but just as lonely." His honesty caught her breath, unguarded and real. No performance or agenda. "I was a history teacher," he added. 9th grade, before life changed." Ava tilted her head. "What happened?" He looked at Ella, his eyes softening. "My wife got sick. Bills piled up. I left the classroom for shift work. Waiting tables let me be there during her chemo. After she passed, I never went back." Ava blinked, her armor cracking. "You gave it all up?" He shook his head. "No, I traded it. For her." He nodded toward Ella, her laughter a melody in the air. "Not a loss, a different legacy." Ava had no retort, no quip to shield her. The silence felt safe, a rare gift. Ella bounded over, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Can we get ice cream, Daddy? Please?" Miles smiled. "Only if you promise not to fall off the monkey bars again." "I didn't fall," she declared. "I slid with style." Ava's laugh burst free, surprising her with its lightness. Miles turned to her. "Join us for ice cream? You saved her from a scraped knee, earned at least a scoop." Ava hesitated, her mind flashing to conference calls. "I have meetings." "They'll wait," he said gently. "She won't be 6 forever." The truth landed soft but heavy. Ava stood, brushing off her coat. "I haven't had ice cream in 5 years." "Then you're overdue," Miles replied, rising. Ella grabbed their hands, Ava on the left, Miles on the right, pulling them toward the ice cream cart with the ease of a child who'd done it 100 times. Ava felt Ella's small hand in hers, a quiet, terrifying, beautiful shift. Trust. It had been a lifetime since she'd felt it. On a park bench, with dripping cones and sticky fingers, Ava looked at Miles. "Why are you like this?" He raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Patient, steady. I keep waiting for the catch." He thought for a moment. "Maybe I lost the catch long ago. Now I just walk different." She stared, his words sinking deep. "That's the most poetic thing anyone said to me over pistachio ice cream." He grinned. "Don't give me too much credit. I'm better over coffee." Ella interrupted, chocolate smeared on her chin. "Miss Ava, you should come to our pizza night Friday. Daddy burns the crust, but we pretend it's fancy." Ava glanced at Miles, startled. He shrugged. "You're welcome if you want." Curecho, she didn't answer, but she didn't say no, and that was enough. Friday night, the scent of charred pizza crust filled Miles' Queen's apartment, a loyal, uninvited guest that felt like home. Ava stood awkwardly by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, as Miles slid a homemade pizza from the oven. Its edges blackened, pepperoni huddled to one side like it was fleeing a disaster. Ella clapped, undeterred. "It's perfect." Ava raised a skeptical brow. "Is this normal?" Miles smirked over his shoulder. "It's tradition. Every Friday, one overcooked pizza, one undercooked movie, and a dad faking it till he makes it." "It's charming," Ava said cautiously, settling at a dining table that screamed clearance sale, its scratches telling stories of a decade's survival. "You can say pathetic," Miles teased. "We're not fancy." Her voice softened. "No, you're real." It wasn't flattery. It was a confession, raw and unguarded. Ella handed Ava a paper plate like it was fine china. "We have 3 rules for pizza night," she declared, holding up 3 fingers with the gravity of a sacred oath. 1, you try a bite, even if it's black. 2, no phones. 3, you laugh at least once, even if it's fake. Ava blinked, the last rule striking her like a quiet arrow. Miles leaned in. "Ella made them when she was 4. I just enforced them." Ava set her phone face down, picked up a slice with hesitant fingers. "I'm in." They ate. They laughed. Ella ensured it. The pizza was awful in a way that made it perfect, its imperfection a balm to Ava's polished world. Midway through a chaotic animated film about a llama and a time machine, Ava slipped to the bathroom. There, amid a cracked porcelain sink, a flecked mirror, and a crooked cabinet door, she saw it. A faded photo, framed in chipped wood. A woman with a soft smile and kind eyes stood beside a younger Miles, a baby Ella on his shoulder. Ava's knees weakened, the image a quiet earthquake. She was still holding it when Miles appeared in the hallway. "That's Sam," he said, his voice a reverent whisper. Ava turned, startled. She was beautiful. She was everything, he said. Smart, patient, brave. Cancer took her slowly, but completely. His words held no bitterness, only love that had changed shape, not substance. "You kept her here," Ava said, glancing at the cold clinical bathroom. He smiled faintly. "She hated this room, too sterile, so I put her here to warm it." Ava swallowed hard. "You talk about her like she's still here." "She's in every room," he said simply. A pause, then Ava's voice broke free, unbidden. "I don't think I've ever been loved like that." Miles met Ava's gaze, his eyes steady as a lighthouse in a storm. "Then the people who've known you didn't look hard enough." The silence that followed was a living thing, heavy with truth and healing, wrapping them in a quiet that didn't demand answers, only presence. In the living room, Ella lay sprawled across the couch, one leg dangling, surrounded by empty plates and a half-eaten cookie, her dreams untouched by the world's weight. Ava watched her, a soft ache in her chest. "She trusts so easily," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Miles nodded, his gaze tender. "I try to keep it that way. The world will teach her caution soon enough. I want to delay that lesson as long as I can." Ava sat beside him, her voice softer still. "I never had that. The space to just be a kid. I was solving adult problems in a child's body, smiling to survive, sharp-tongued because it was my only shield." Miles' eyes softened, seeing beyond her polished exterior. "You still smile to survive." Ava turned, startled by his perception. "You noticed?" He nodded, his voice gentle but piercing. "I've worn that smile. It hides a wound so well, even you forget it's bleeding." Ava looked away, her throat tight. "I built everything from nothing. Every inch of success came from staying 10 steps ahead, from not feeling, not flinching. And now, here I am, in a tiny apartment with bad pizza and a child who barely knows me. I've never felt safer." Miles didn't speak. Instead, he reached for her hand, his calloused fingers brushing her manicured ones, a quiet bridge between their worlds. "Safety doesn't come from walls," he said. "It comes from being seen and still being let in." Ava gripped his hand tighter, her voice trembling. "What do you see when you look at me, Miles?" He didn't hesitate. A woman tired of being strong all the time, who doesn't know how to ask for softness. Her heart cracked, not with pain, but with release, like porcelain breaking to reveal something raw and alive beneath. She didn't cry. She wasn't ready. But something shifted, and this time, she let it stay broken. As she left that night, Miles walked her to the door. She turned, suddenly unsure. Was I okay tonight? He leaned against the frame, a faint smile playing on his lips. You didn't check your phone. You laughed. You ate burnt crust. I'd say you passed. Her crooked smile was a small victory. Maybe next time I'll bring dessert. Only if you stay for it, he said. She hesitated, then nodded once. A quiet promise that felt like everything. The boardroom was a sterile cage, scented with eucalyptus diffusers and catered lunches, masking fear with curated calm. Ava sat at the head, her posture rigid, lips painted in unyielding crimson. Around her 10 men and 2 women in tailored suits clicked pens like metronomes of passive aggression. The screen blazed with words no CEO wanted to see. Q2 forecast, revised downward. Nick Haynes, her VP of Operations, cleared his throat, his composure as polished as ever. No sugarcoating it, Ava. The viral video dented trust. Corporate clients are stalling deals. Brand sentiment's down 23% in a week. Ava's eyes didn't waver. We don't run on sentiment. We run on solutions. Margot Levine, the newest board member, ex-CFO of a billion-dollar hedge fund, smiled, a honeyed blade. True, but we're weeks from the IPO. Investors want a face they can trust. Right now, that face, the unspoken cut deep. Ava folded her hands, her voice steady but sharp. Let me guess, you want me to step down. Margot's smile didn't falter. We want the company to succeed. Whether that's with you or a neutral figurehead depends on how you handle this. Ava's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a rage so precise it felt surgical. She'd built this empire from a kitchen table, with blistered fingers and sleepless nights no one saw, and now one human moment threatened to erase it. She stood slow and deliberate. You want me to play soft, to apologize in a consultant's script from someone who's never missed a meal. But I'm already doing the real work, rebuilding trust, not with headlines, but with people. One conversation, one wall at a time. Nick smirked, his voice smooth. That's lovely, Ava, but Wall Street doesn't invest in feelings. Her gaze burned. No, but real people do. And I'm done building companies that forget them. The room fell silent, not with hostility, but with awe, as Ava realized she wasn't defending herself. She was becoming herself. That night, her car didn't turn toward her Manhattan penthouse. It veered to Queens, an unplanned pilgrimage. She stood outside Miles' apartment, a pie box in hand, her heart hammering like a drumline before a verdict. When he opened the door, he blinked. You brought dessert. I brought an apology, she said, but it comes in tiramisu. He stepped aside, a quiet grin. We don't turn away redemption baked in layers. Inside, Ella sat at the kitchen table, humming a Taylor Swift tune, munching apple slices, her crayons scattered like confetti. Her face lit up at Ava's arrival. You came back, Ava smiled, her heart unfastening. I made a promise, didn't I? Ella beamed, pointing to a folded dish towel. I saved you a seat. Ava sat, feeling something loosen within her, a knot she'd carried too long. Dinner was leftovers and laughter, dessert a sweet, fleeting blur. After Ella went to bed, Ava lingered in the doorway, watching Miles tuck her in, brushing a curl from her forehead. She's magic, Ava whispered. She's what keeps me honest, Miles replied. In the kitchen, under moonlight spilling through a cracked window, Miles spoke. She asked if you were her new friend. I didn't know how to answer. Ava looked down, her voice soft. I don't have many friends. Not the real kind. Why not? I thought vulnerability was weakness, she admitted. That if people saw the real me, they'd leave. Miles leaned against the counter, his gaze steady. Or maybe they'd see why you fight so hard. Her eyes shone, unshed tears catching the light. I'm not used to being seen. You are now, he said, whether you're ready or not. Ava stepped closer, cautious as if the quiet safety between them might shatter. I had a board meeting today. They pushed for my resignation. His jaw tightened. Are they insane? No, she said. They're scared. I was too, until you and Ella showed me what strength really is. Not cold or sharp, but warm, messy, and present. Miles searched her face. So what now? She took a breath. I rebuild, not just the company, but me. I want to be worthy of the trust I've demanded. He didn't pull her closer. He didn't need to. She stepped into his arms, a choice made in the quiet of chipped plates and crayon drawings, where two solitary souls began to choose together. Days later, Argento hummed with an electric undercurrent, as if the room itself awaited their arrival. It was meant to be simple. 3 plates, 2 adults navigating an unspoken bloom, and a child with glitter in her hair and spaghetti on her chin. But the air crackled with possibility. Ava wore soft navy, not the power shade of boardrooms, her hair loosely pinned, a single strand curling at her cheek. She was no longer the woman from the viral video, but someone still discovering who she could be. Miles, in a crisp white shirt with rolled sleeves, held Ella's hand, unfazed by the stares and whispers. He was used to being noticed now, but this time, he wasn't alone. Marcy raised an eyebrow from the bar. Candle or good plates? Miles smirked. Both. They were seated at a corner table, reserved for anniversaries or amends. Ava glanced around, half smiling. This doesn't break 100 HR policies? No HR here, Miles said. Just Marcy, probably live tweeting this. Ava's laugh was low, unguarded and real, a sound that surprised even her. Ella handed Ava a napkin folded into a swan, her small hands proud. I made it for you. Ava took it, holding it like fragile porcelain. It's beautiful, thank you. Ella whispered, as if sharing a secret. Keep it in case you forget you're special. Ava's throat tightened. She'd sat with billionaires, held awards, graced Forbes pages, but nothing felt as sacred as this paper swan, shaped like hope. Dinner was warm, messy, alive, stories spilling over plates, Ella's chaotic school play, Ava's disastrous banana bread explosion, Miles' tale of mistaking wasabi for avocado and weeping through a date's appetizer. Laughter wove them together, a fragile thread in a world that had once felt so sharp. By dessert, Ella was a small, dreaming weight in Ava's lap, her tiny hand curled into the folds of her coat, a fragile anchor in a world of chaos. Miles reached across the table, brushing a crumb from Ava's wrist with a gentleness that belied his calloused hands. You look terrified, he said, his voice soft but piercing. I am, she whispered, her eyes flickering with vulnerability. Of what? Of wanting this too much, of not deserving it. He tilted his head, his gaze steady as a lighthouse. Let me ask you something, Ava. When you walk into a room, do you scan for escape routes or soft places to land? She blinked, caught off guard. Escape routes. That's not power. It's survival. He leaned closer, his voice a quiet tide. You've been surviving so long, you forgot what safe feels like. Her eyes dropped to Ella, her breath catching. This feels dangerous. No, Miles said. It feels unfamiliar. There's a difference. Ava met his gaze, her voice trembling. What if I break it? He reached for her hand, his fingers enveloping hers. Then we fix it. Together. Nothing here is porcelain, Ava. We're all cracked, but we hold anyway. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back, not ready to let them fall. Not here, not yet. Later they stepped into the cool Manhattan night, the city's pulse of horns and flickering lights swirling around them. For once, Ava didn't feel alone in its chaos. Miles carried Ella, her head nestled against his shoulder, her hair a soft tangle. Ava walked beside them in silence, her heart full yet unmoored. At the curb, her driver waited, motionless until she gave a nod. She turned to Miles, her voice tentative. I've been thinking, he smirked. Dangerous. I want to do something reckless. His brow arched. Like what? I want to invite you to a charity gala next week, full of people who pretend to care and wear dresses they'll never touch again. Miles blinked, stunned. Me? Yes, she said, her voice steady. This year, I want to show up with someone who reminds me why I started fighting. He didn't answer immediately, his eyes dropping to Ella, asleep in his arms, her innocence a quiet tether. Ava, I'm a waiter from Queens. I don't own a tux. I've never RSVP'd or valeted. She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. You stood in a viral storm and didn't flinch. You saw a woman the world called a villain and didn't turn away. You raise a daughter with more grace than anyone I've known. You think that's not gala-worthy? He stared, her words sinking deep. You're serious. I am. He looked at Ella, then back at Ava, a slow smile breaking through. Okay, I'll go, but only if you promise not to run when the whispers start. I don't run anymore, she said, her voice resolute. I walk into the fire now. And if I'm the one who panics? Her smile was gentle, a rare softness. Then I'll remind you who you are, like you did for me. As her car pulled away, Ava glanced back through the window, seeing Miles still standing there. Ella in his arms, his eyes locked on hers, steady, present, safe. For the first time in years, she didn't hold her breath. She felt ready for the fire, the faith, the love that arrived not in perfection, but in persistence. The ballroom was a cathedral of opulence, its chandelier dripping crystal like frozen flames, casting prisms across a sea of tuxedos and gowns that whispered secrets with every step. A string quartet wove music that didn't fill the space but sculpted it, each note deliberate, curated. Miles Carter stood at the center, his rented tux slightly snug at the shoulders. But it wasn't the fit that unnerved him. It was the mirrors, reflecting versions of himself that felt foreign in this glittering world. You okay? Ava's voice came from behind, soft yet certain, a lifeline in the chaos. He turned and his breath caught. She was midnight incarnate, her gown deep and unadorned, its off-the-shoulder line and daring neckline commanding the room without a hint of sparkle. You clean up nice, she said, smiling. He fumbled for words. Your power wrapped in silk. Good, she replied, stepping beside him, because I'll need it. They moved through the ballroom, a slow ripple in a pond of wealth, drawing curious glances that sharpened into recognition. Whispers trailed them, but Ava didn't flinch, her arm looped through his. Remind me why I agreed to this, Miles murmured. Because I asked, she said, and because healing means walking into the places that once made you feel small. He took a breath. This place is doing a fine job of that. She squeezed his arm. You don't look small. You look like the only one here who remembers how to breathe. Dinner unfolded, speeches droned, and then came the auction, a parade of extravagance. Private jets, vineyard tours with celebrity chefs, paintings more ego than art. The centerpiece stole the air, a private dinner with Ava Lancaster, priceless, one bidder only, all proceeds for children's literacy. The MC, in a sparkling tux, raised the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, Miss Lancaster offers herself, a dinner anywhere in the world, any topic, except perhaps table manners. Laughter rippled. Ava rose, took a poised bow, and sat, her composure a mask. Miles leaned in, voice low. You didn't mention this. I didn't know until an hour ago, she whispered. Nick's surprise. And you're okay being auctioned off? She shrugged, a faint smile. If it helps kids read, I'll survive a stake in small talk. The bidding erupted. 10,000, 20, 35. From a woman in red, a hedge fund titan, a tech bro in Italian shoes. The room swirled with wealth's ego. Then from the back, a voice cut through, quiet but clear. 100,000. Miles. The room stilled, gasps fluttering like moths against the chandelier's glow. Ava turned, stunned. Miles! He didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the MC. 100,000 for the dinner. I'll pay tonight. The MC, half panicked, stammered. Sir, do you have credentials for that bid? Miles tapped his phone, calm as stone. Bank transfer confirmed. Should hit your account by dessert. A pause, the charity director nodded. Sold, the MC declared, flustered, to the gentleman with the quiet confidence. Applause broke out, awkward but alive, as Ava stared, her heart racing at the reckless courage of a man who'd just rewritten the room's narrative. Ava's eyes locked on Miles, wide with disbelief. Miles, that was reckless. He met her gaze, his voice steady as stone. Insane, she pressed, her breath catching. Where did you get that kind of money? He exhaled, slow and deliberate, his words carrying the weight of a long-held vow. Sam's life insurance. I never touched it until tonight. Ava's heart stuttered. Miles, you said healing meant walking into what hurts. You've walked into rooms where you couldn't afford to stay. This time you bought the room. Her breath caught, not at the audacity, but at the truth. He wasn't showing off. He was showing up. Under the glittering scrutiny of Manhattan's elite, Ava reached for his hand, her fingers entwining with his, refusing to let go. In that moment, beneath the chandelier's frozen flames, they were no longer a CEO and a waiter. They were two souls choosing courage over comfort. Outside, the night sky stretched vast over a city too crowded to notice. They stood together, the air sharp with possibility. You didn't have to do that, Ava said softly, her voice trembling with something deeper than fear. I know, Miles replied. You don't owe me anything. I know. She turned to him, her heart laid bare. Then why? He paused, his eyes searching hers as if weighing the cost of truth. Because you're not the woman in that video. I wanted this city to see that. Her breath hitched, tears threatening to spill. And what do you see? He stepped closer, his voice a quiet tide. Someone who craves softness without breaking, who fought in silence and now seeks truth. A woman who finally believes she's worthy, not for what she built, but for who she is beneath it all. Ava closed her eyes, the weight of his words unraveling her. Then, in a reckless act of surrender, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't polished or perfect, but it was real, raw, breathless, a collision of two hearts under a sky that no longer felt so vast. When they parted, Miles whispered, You're not porcelain anymore, Ava. She smiled through unshed tears. No, I think I'm fireproof now. For Ava, love was the easy part. The quiet walks, the messy pizza nights, the sticky smiles of ice cream shared with Ella. Those were moments she could capture in a card. But trust was her rarest currency, forged in a childhood of foster homes and guarded with a ferocity that had built her empire. Now, in her penthouse, she stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, the city's unblinking lights mocking her. Her lawyer's voice crackled, sharp and final. They leaked it, Ava. The board's voting to move forward without you. Unanimous, temporary removal, pending image rehabilitation. Her hand tightened on the marble countertop, nails digging into its cold surface. How soon? She asked, voice steady despite the knife in her back. 2 days. They'll want you to announce it. Control the narrative. She hung up without a word, because betrayal didn't care about pleasantries. Across the city, in a Queen's gymnasium, Miles stood holding Ella's coat as she twirled in a cardboard costume, her glittered rings sparkling under fluorescent lights. Daddy, I'm Saturn, she squealed, her joy a beacon in the chaos of a school play where kids forgot lines and tripped over shoelaces. To Miles, it was sacred, a sanctuary where happiness thrived without permission. He checked his phone once. No messages from Ava. Odd, but not alarming. Not yet. Later, as Ella slept with a glitter star taped to her cheek, he paced the living room, her absence a quiet ache. When he saw her name trending again, Lancaster Gate blazing across Twitter, his chest tightened like a vice. He clicked a headline, and his heart plummeted. Exclusive. Inside the bid. Who really paid for that $100K dinner? The article sneered, suggesting Ava had staged the auction, that Miles was a hired actor, a single dad with suspiciously perfect timing. Blurry photos fueled the lie. One of Ava's assistant at the auction table, another of Miles, stunned. Worst of all, a quote from a former board member claimed Ava had scripted her redemption. Miles read until the words blurred, then shut off his phone, sinking into silence. The next morning, Ava appeared at his door, eyes hollow, coat unbuttoned. No makeup, just her, raw and unguarded. He opened the door slowly, and she stepped inside, as if returning to a battlefield that once felt like home. I didn't know it would break like this, she said, her voice frayed. You didn't call, he replied, quiet but firm. I thought I could fix it before you saw. He shook his head. Don't protect me with silence. That's not us. Her jaw tightened, her eyes glistening. They're replacing me. The board's turned. The press is feasting. I'm so tired, Miles. I can't breathe without looking over my shoulder. He studied her, his voice low. Tell me the truth. I didn't orchestrate that night, she said, her words fierce with conviction. You weren't scripted. It blindsided me. I was terrified, awed, and God, Miles, I needed it to be real. He stepped closer. Was it? She nodded, tears brimming. The only real thing in my career. He hesitated, not from doubt, but from a lifetime of loss, teaching him to fear fire, even when it promised warmth. Ava, do you want to win or heal? They're not always the same path. I want both, she said, her voice breaking. He touched her face, gentle but sure. Then we walked together, no armor, no headlines, just you and me. And if I lose everything? His smile was soft, unyielding. We start again, from truth, not power. That night, Ava faced a press conference alone, no consultants, no scripts, just her at a folding table, a dozen microphones waiting like vultures. She spoke her truth. The video, the waiter who held a mirror to her soul, the auction, the bid, the love that arrived in broken pieces she hadn't sought but couldn't push away. I've built an empire, she said, her voice steady, but I'm proudest of learning to fall and still let someone catch me. No spin, just a woman choosing transparency over triumph. In Queens, Miles watched live. Ella curled beside him, asleep, her warmth a quiet anchor. For the first time, he didn't feel like a side character in someone else's story. He was the reason it had turned. Rain fell on Manhattan, a soft, exhausted confession, as Ava sat on the edge of a fountain outside Lincoln Center, heels discarded, toes dipping into cold water, seeking something human in the chill. The press conference was over, the backlash spent, leaving a silence that wasn't peace but grief. She'd stepped down, not forced but chosen, walking away from the empire she'd built, her name still etched on glass but no longer at the helm. Her legacy stood, but her future was a blank page. It should have felt like failure, but it didn't. It felt like a beginning, uncharted and raw. Rain fell on Manhattan, a soft confession of a city too weary to speak. Ava sat on the edge of a fountain outside Lincoln Center, heels discarded, toes tracing circles in the cold water, as if seeking the pulse of her own humanity. The press conference was over, its echoes fading, leaving not peace but a tender grief. She'd walked away from her empire, not forced but chosen, her name still etched on glass but no longer commanding the helm. Her legacy stood, her future a blank canvas. It should have felt like defeat, but it shimmered like a beginning, uncharted and alive. Footsteps approached, steady through the drizzle. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. I figured I'd find you here, Miles said, sliding onto the stone ledge, his jacket already damp. Ava's faint smile held a quiet ache. How? You come here when you need to feel small again, he said, his voice a warm anchor. A beat. You've been watching me that long? Since you walked into that diner, ordering silence but screaming for rescue with your eyes. Ava blinked, her gaze tracing the city's unyielding lights. I built towers thinking height would shield me from hurt. Miles took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. And how'd that work out? I still ended up on the ground, she whispered. He chuckled, low and warm. Good. That's where roots grow. They sat in a silence that didn't demand filling, the rain a soft hymn around them. Finally, she voiced the question that had haunted her since stepping away from power. Do you think I gave up? Miles shook his head. No, you chose differently. That's harder. Anyone can fight. It takes real strength to let go of a self that no longer serves you. His words settled deep, rooting in her bones. I want to build again, she said. Slower, smaller, honest. No press, no facades. Like what? He asked. She shrugged, a spark in her eyes. Maybe a literacy nonprofit or community leadership training. Something for kids who never see someone like me without cameras. Miles grinned, his eyes glinting. So, you're saving the world. Quieter this time. Ava bumped her shoulder against his, a rare playfulness. I'm starting in Queens. His head tilted. Serious? She nodded. I found a rundown space near the diner. It's perfect. What do you need? Volunteers, patience, someone who brews terrible coffee but shows up anyway. He laughed, a sound like sunlight breaking through clouds. Is that a job offer or a proposal? Her eyes glinted, mischievous yet sincere. I'm proposing something. I just haven't named it yet. A week later, a white door swung open in Queens, its crooked sign reading Chapter 1. No gala, no ribbon cutting, just sweat, laughter, and a stubborn belief that broken things could hold light. Inside, mismatched chairs circled a used bookshelf. A mural of a tree adorned the wall, each leaf a child's fingerprint. Ella stood at the front, reading from a dog-eared Charlotte's Web to a circle of second graders, her voice bright with purpose. Miles was in the back, wrestling a wobbly table with duct tape and charm. Ava sat beside a girl named Lanny, guiding her to write her first English sentence. My name is Lanny, and I am not afraid anymore. Ava's throat tightened, her heart swelling at the room's chaos, its noise, its joy. This wasn't an empire. It was alive, pulsing with possibility. That night, as the last child left and the lights dimmed to a warm glow, Miles pulled Ava close, his arms a haven. You know, he murmured, you were never porcelain. She smiled against his chest, her voice soft. No, no, he whispered. You were steel wrapped in velvet. Now you're soft by choice, strongest thing I've ever seen. She pressed her lips to his, gentle yet certain, a kiss that held no demands, only promises. On a Sunday morning in Queens, Chapter 1 smelled of cinnamon rolls and second chances. Sunlight danced through mismatched curtains, spilling across a chalkboard where Ella's handwriting declared, today's word, belonging. Ava sorted donated books, her hair tucked behind her ears, a mug of terrible coffee cooling beside her. The old Ava would have rushed it. Now she let it sit, savoring the slowness. Across the room, Miles crouched beside a boy struggling with the word strength. It's okay to mess up, he said, voice soft. Strength isn't never falling. It's trying, even when it's hard. The boy looked up. Like you and Ava, Miles smiled. Exactly. Ava overheard, a quiet joy blooming in her chest. Neither pride nor peace, but something deeper. That afternoon, they hosted an open house. Simple, with cookies and chairs, an invitation for neighbors to see their work. Single moms, retired teachers, immigrant parents, and kids who'd seen Ava on TV now saw her on the floor, reading Green Eggs and Ham with goofy voices. She wasn't a CEO anymore. She was reachable. At dusk, as the last guest left, Ella dozed on a beanbag, a picture book open on her chest, her hair a messy crown. Ava and Miles stood in the doorway, gazing at the quiet street. Ever think about that night? Ava asked. The diner? He said. She nodded. The order you didn't take. He chuckled. You mean the coffee I didn't serve? Every day. That choice changed everything. She turned to him, eyes steady. You didn't serve me because you thought I didn't need caffeine. No, he said. I saw something empty in your eyes. Not everyone powerful feels powerful inside. Her breath caught. You saw through the glass. I didn't just see, he said. I waited until you were ready to step out. What if I hadn't come back, she asked, voice soft. I'd have kept pouring coffee, waiting for another miracle. A golden pause settled, warm and unhurried. Then Ava spoke, her voice a truth she was finally brave enough to name. I love you, Miles. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his smile soft. I've been loving you since you threatened me with a spoon. She laughed, tears glistening. That was my worst day. And it gave me my best, he said. That night, after Ella was tucked under lavender-scented blankets, Miles found Ava in the kitchen, barefoot in his old shirt, humming a tune he wanted to etch into his heart. He leaned in the doorway. There's one order I haven't taken. She turned, curious. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Ava's breath hitched. Inside was a silver ring, shaped like a tiny book, its spine etched with "Begin Again." No words were needed. She slid it onto her finger, her kiss a vow that needed no paperwork. Months later, Chapter 1 had grown. 2 new volunteers, a weekend art class, a dad and daughter story hour, where Miles and Ella read every Saturday. Ava no longer ran. She built slowly, rested often, loved deeply. On the center's wall hung a framed quote, "Not everything we build must touch the sky. Sometimes the bravest thing is a life." Outside, Manhattan roared, indifferent. But in that small Queen Center, a rare heart beat steady, born from an order he didn't take, and a love they chose. Word by word, day by day. Not perfect, but real. Theirs.